It's time, Fort Wayne. Your sports, your station. It's the Sports Rush with Brett Rump. Covering all the topics that hit a nerve here in the Summit City.
Clark, 11 yards, touchdown.
Only on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Now here's your host, Brett Rump.
The greatest, most interesting, most important person of all time.
You are incredible. Older than one.
Yeah, well, you're half right.
What is this, amateur hour?
This is going to be huge.
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just when I think you've said the stupidest thing ever, you keep talking.
I think that's the worst thing I've ever heard.
That boy ain't right.
The simplest way to put it, I have problems.
Welcome to the alleged show.
Getting over the hump on a Wednesday edition of the Sports Rush. Your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump along with Adam Lundy, and we've got you connected on the Parkview Sports Medicine text line at 260-447-8500. A big hour on the way. Always a special hour when we bring on Kent Sterling from KentSterling.com. He'll be joining us in about 17 minutes. Also, want to throw this in. The ticket breakfast with the Tin Caps coming up this Friday. Couple of details that I might not have been accurate on because I was going by memory, but I do want to make sure everybody understands that if you go to Parkview Field this Friday morning between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., just to buy tickets, they don't have to be the VIP tickets, just to buy tickets for a Tin Caps game this summer, you can enjoy a free breakfast buffet inside the suite level lounge, but also Friday morning is the first opportunity to jump in and get a premium ticket package with opportunities to get select games, guaranteed meet and greets, question and answer, and giveaways, plus plenty more. So if you want details on some of the packages, especially if you're like a Seinfeld fan or A League of Their Own and you want to meet the actors that played in both of those, or what is it, Bluey and all the others.
Yeah, if you have kids and you want to guarantee that your kids will get a chance to have a meet and greet with Bluey and Paw Patrol is another one, as well as SpongeBob, who will all be there.
Or for instance, like Adam got all excited about Princess Night.
Oh, I get excited.
When he found out he could do a meet and greet with the princesses.
It's always a good night, but,
It'd be a bad idea, but, now you got a woman.
I do, so none of that, but I'm looking forward to SpongeBob SquarePants Day, my man.
By the way, with free breakfast, maybe we should mention to, Michael Limmer and Mike Nutter that Friday morning just happens to be the time we're coming by to pick up our media credentials for 20. Just happening.
We just happened to be there.
Yeah, I just was strolling by. I thought I'd stop in and pick up our credentials for 2025.
You mean there's cinnamon rolls here?
Yeah, geez, what did there? Bacon. You got bacon? You know what? It's funny. Our text line blew up with bacon. Nobody went with sausage. Everybody wanted to shout. And they did it with like all caps and exclamation points. It's like not close. Bacon is our winner.
Yeah, that was our hot topic question of today's show. Didn't expect it to be, but people weighing in on the text line, 260-447-8500. They're picking bacon over sausage. No sausage fans have staked their claim.
Coming up at tomorrow's show, it's pancakes or waffles. What will be your choice? That's the highlight of the Sports Rush coming on a Thursday edition from 4 to 6.
That'll be good.
Oh, yeah, can't wait for that. When you want to talk about a professional radio tease, there it is. It's going to have the people lining up at 4 p.m. with their radio dial set.
We're just going to have to do a whole breakfast madness, Brett.
Nobody will be disappointed if we forget. So last night, Purdue gets beat at Michigan State. Looked like a little bit of a tired Boilermaker squad. They made some careless turnovers. Braden Smith, among those that couldn't seem to hang on to the ball. He passed it to the other team. And I'll tell you, Michigan State's one of those teams. They get out and go in transition. They are not slow about taking turnovers and converting them into points. And, you got guys like Jace Richardson and Jaden Akins and who else? Trey Holloman.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys, man, they get it and go. And they're not only guys that can finish, but they're guys that find the right man to distribute it to. And they got some buckets out of transition. They also took advantage of Purdue and their weak ball screen defense. But again, I think the ball screen defense is a product of maybe not having quite the same bounce in their step because they're a little tired. But, like the guards are kind of tagging behind. And so they're not really getting through the screen. They're kind of more just following the guy, and then that brings the big a step up, and then he's susceptible to that roll to the basket. And the big is getting caught in that in-between space. See, here's what you have to do in a ball screen situation. If you're the big and you're going to come out, you've either got to aggressively double, because as a big, if you get right up on the guard that comes off that ball screen, you take away his ability to lob the pass because he can't get it over your arms if you're right up on him. But if you're playing halfway, that means the guard is 5 feet away from you and the big rolls to the basket 5 feet behind you, and it's an easy lob right over the top of you because it's like playing jump rope. And so Purdue got caught 3 or 4 times in that in-between space where they didn't aggressively double, but yet they also got caught trying to come up and help and get out of position, and it also left them without a good rotation. I think the help side defense wasn't sure, is the big supposed to go or not go? I don't know what the scout was or how they planned on playing it, but all of that happens because the guard gets beat on the initial dribble, and I talked about this. Guard defense at this time of year, and that's why they say guards are so pivotal, and good guards are so important when you get to the into March, because I think a lot of the guards, you lose that step and you either beat on penetration or you can beat a guy to the basket on your own penetration, and I think you're seeing that. Braden Smith, he didn't have a lot of drives and finishes. And earlier this year, we were seeing Braden Smith coming off that high screen and being able to attack and basically beat a guy down the right side of the lane to the basket to finish with a layup. Didn't see it hardly at all last night. He just doesn't have that same explosiveness. And we've seen it with the Mastodons, with like Jalen Jackson, just not quite having that same explosiveness to burst off the top of the key, get the first step past your man, and then be able to finish through contact at the rim because you've got that full physical capability. And so Purdue loses last night, but it makes me think about a phrase that late season success isn't always about practice makes perfect. It's about having a perfect practice. It's not how much you go out and practice that's going to make you a better basketball team. It's about how can you limit the amount of time you actually spend practicing, but make it more productive, maybe more focused on one particular skill set, and give your team as much rest as possible, because the team with the better legs in March are the teams that are going to do the best. And right now, Purdue needs the break, and they've got just one game over the next, 10 days. So they've got some extra time off, not only leading into this Sunday's game against Indiana, but then they have 5 days off before they host UCLA, and then after that. So it's a short road trip. It's a Sunday game, which means it's an afternoon game. They'll be able to get plenty of rest that night. And then they've got UCLA coming into Mackey, so they don't have to make the long trip. They don't have to even make a road trip. In fact, I'm not even sure if you count Indiana going from West Lafayette to Bloomington as a true road trip. It's, an hour and a half away?
Yeah.
Maybe 2 hours at most.
Not too bad of a drive.
But anyway, the bottom line is, and Eric Thornton mentioned it yesterday when we had him on, the Norwell Lady Knights coach, because we talked about the keys to postseason success and what he may have learned. And Bob Knight even did it. And that is late in the season when the players get worn down, especially now that there's year-round basketball. These players have been going at it since June. And, coaches of all levels, whether it's college or high school, they've had months to be able to implement everything into their offense, everything into their inbound plays. There's not a whole lot more that you need to truly coach or teach at practice. So the best thing to do is, if you've got one thing you want to add to an inbound play, great. Get together, practice that, but then call it a day, maybe watch a little film and get the rest. And I think that's what Purdue needs to do. They just need to get the break. It's a long season, a lot of basketball. You've got some key players that have played heavy minutes. But at this point, you've already gone through every offensive set, every pattern, every inbound play, every defense you want to play, every late game situation, every fundamental. And so you don't really need to practice 2 hours every day to get things accomplished. You find 1 or 2 things that you want to improve, and you focus on those for 30 minutes or so, and you move on, and get off the court. But I got to tell you a good story, and I brought this up before. When I was at Concordia, and it's a long time ago, 1981, that long. But we had the worst regular season record in the history of my high school. Dead last. I mean, nobody had as bad a season at Concordia, who had been around for like 50 years. Nobody had as bad a season as we had when I was a junior. And it came off 2 years, the freshman and sophomore years, where we had state-ranked teams, and all of a sudden the whole core of that team graduated. And here we came along, and we had some talent, but we were very inexperienced. We didn't finish games well. And we ended up, at one point, we were 2-15. Now, I don't know if the coaches just wanted to say, hang up the towel and get to dinner on time because this team isn't worth it. But we got to sectional play, and at the end of the season, they dropped all running from practice. We didn't do scrimmages, full court. Any scrimmage we did was half court. It was limited. The suicides that you run at the beginning and the end of practice, we'd done them all year long. And, of course, the consequences, you had to finish in a certain time or you ran another one. All of a sudden, there was no running. There was no full court drills. And we became a different team. Apparently, we shouldn't have been running all year.
Yeah.
Because then in sectionals, we went on to win a 5-overtime game.
Yep.
Over a much better opponent than we were. But we'd been rested.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 2 days later, we had to come back and play again against a Northrop team that was far superior to us athletically. We were able to play man-to-man defense against them, something they'd never seen. But again, we were rested. And then we made it to the sectional championship, and we beat Harding in the championship. We were the second team in Concordia's history to win a sectional title, and yet that same team is in the record books. The exact same team is in the record books as having the worst regular season in the history of Concordia basketball, and it might be a record that still stands today because we had to beat 2 really bad teams our final weekend of the regular season to improve our record to 4-15 as we entered sectionals.
Look at you. Look at your team go, man. I'm proud of you
But the point is, you got to give credit to the coaches. The fact that they realized that we'd been beat up. We were mentally and physically exhausted. Things didn't go well. That beats you up mentally. You don't have a real long bench. You're playing 6 guys primarily. And they took running completely out of practice. I mean, no full court scrimmaging, no suicides. And it made a difference. We had our legs at the postseason, and it might have made a difference with the other teams if they were still – I don't know what they were doing in practice, but it's just so important, I think, at this time of year that you don't let a tired team be the reason you lose in a postseason tournament, a sectional tournament. And Eric Thornton brought it up, and I thought it was well said yesterday. Coach Kaufman brought it up at our coaches show that he felt like the team needed an extra day off or two. And Bobby Knight used to practice it regularly, where he said he would cut practices down to as little as 30 minutes during the month of February into March because there was nothing more important than having a well-rested team as you went into the postseason. 260-447-8500, our Parkview Sports Medicine text line. By the way, a couple of schedule announcements that came out.
Oh, okay. What do we got?
IU is going to play Marquette next year.
Yes, in
Neutral
Chicago.
site game in Chicago at the United Center. That was just announced, but also we kind of skipped past this, not sure why, but Purdue has also announced a home-and-home agreement with Iowa State.
Yeah. We've been talking about their head coach a little bit here in the past few days.
Yeah, and Iowa State's been a really solid program. So Purdue, Iowa State will play back-to-back years. I think the first year's in Mackey. Am I right?
I'll check here for you.
And IU is going to play Marquette. As one thing Mike Woodson has done is he has added a tougher non-conference schedule than what previous coaches have scheduled at Indiana. Now the question is, who's the coach going to be when they take on Marquette on November 9th? I don't know if that's the first or second game of the year, but it's got to be one of the first games of the season. November 9th of this coming fall. It will be at Chicago's United Center, Indiana, and the Marquette Golden Eagles.
It does say it'll be part of the opening week of the 25-26 men's college basketball season, but I don't know if Indiana will have a game before that.
My guess is, as the contract's being put together, one of the TV networks figured out what day they needed that game to be able to fit on the calendar. And I don't know how far the NBA is in their scheduling for next year. You've got to deal with the NHL schedule for next season.
Yeah.
So everything had to come together to figure out when they could play it. But it is November 9th, Indiana versus Marquette. All right, we'll take a break because the great Kent Sterling is going to be joining us. Coming up next, it's a Hump Day edition of the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Pacers get back to action tomorrow night after their NBA All-Star break. They're taking on the John Conchar-led Memphis Grizzlies. You might get him on the floor, you might not.
Hey, when he's on those court for that 6 to 10 minutes, he's the leader.
Well, you can tell, too. He's the head of the bench mob. So we got to give credit where credit is due. But Memphis will be at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That's tomorrow night. You can listen to the game right here at 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Got to talk some Indiana basketball, maybe even a touch of Purdue. I don't know if he'll go there or not, but it is Optimism Wednesday, so we have to have a positive spin on things. It is the great Kent Sterling from KentSterling.com. Indianapolis, been talking sports damn near his whole life. And even though he hasn't been around that long, such a young man, we still love to hear from him here on this show. He is our favorite guest that we have on the Sports Rush. He's joining us right now. Kent, how are you? It's good to have you back.
I am good, but all of that praise and no mention of my boyish good looks, my charming disposition, none of that. I don't understand. What have I done to offend you?
No, sometimes you've just got to shine a little light on yourself. And so I left the door open.
Perfect. And I walked right through.
You did. I knew you'd bust through. I knew we could count on you, Kent. But we got to talk a little bit about Indiana and where they're at, because I know you were one of those that caught that flu bug and dealt with illness. And God, I said things been nasty for a lot of people, and it's kind of the hot potato flu. It's like when you get it, you can't wait to get rid of it and give it to somebody else. Let them deal with it. But you were out for a little while with under the weather, but it's good to have you back, and that gives us a chance to catch up on everything happening with the Indiana Hoosiers. Of course, Mike Woodson has quote quote resigned his position. Yeah. We all know what's behind that, but I want to talk about Indiana as a whole right now, because one of the things I thought about as I was driving into the show today is I was thinking about Indiana. Name one player, and I thought if there's anybody I should ask this question to, it's got to be Kent Sterling. Give me one player, Kent, that you think has shown notable improvement either from last year or through the season, that is a better player now than they were with just their personal development.
God, man, you know what? It begins and ends, I think, with Anthony Leal. That's it. And that's a stretch. But I think that's the only one. Galloway hadn't gotten better. The transfers coming in aren't any better today at Indiana than they were at Stanford, Washington State, or at Arizona. Goody's gotten an opportunity, but I don't think he's any better than he was at Illinois. He's just getting more minutes. So
I kind of feel that way about Leal.
Question.
I feel that way about Leal a little bit. I'm like, this probably was always something he could do if he just got some minutes. But
yeah,
has he improved, or is he just getting more opportunity to show what he's capable of? But I thought about that because I thought, okay, that was where Mike Woodson kind of hung his hat on getting this job, was that he was going to develop players. And you've got a lot of guys that are those types of players that could have professional careers, some of them hoping to be maybe on the cusp of being an NBA talent. and I'm just not sure they're getting the development.
Yeah, you look at a guy like Miles Rice, and Miles Rice looked like an NBA player in November when they played South Carolina, and he's done nothing from that point forward that has been impressive at all. And I really don't understand that. You look at a guy like Kanan Carlisle, who's pretty good as a freshman at Stanford, and he's been objectively terrible and really a negative impact guy for Indiana this season. You know, Ballo has kind of been Ballo, but if you're 7 feet tall and you weigh 280 pounds, you're going to have an advantage over some of the guys that you play against. It really has not been the kind of season I think that Woodson thought it was going to be. I think he thought that he could just kind of aggregate a bunch of talent by, walking up to guys, handing them bags of cash, NIL cash, and have the team play well. And that's just not the way basketball works.
You know what we've learned, and Mike Woodson, it took an entire season to figure this out. We asked the questions before the season even began. How can Malik Renew and Omar Ballo, how can they coexist and play together? Yeah. And Indiana's actually proven they become a better team when only one or the other's on the floor.
Yeah, and then you add Mbako to that mix, and for game after game after game, they started those three guys together, and they were playing, 20 to 22 minutes together, and the plus-minus was hideous. I mean, it was just horrible, and I don't know how you could even watch those games, much less watch them again on tape, and not see that those three guys are really an ill fit together, and that Renew and Ballo are as well. They just clogged stuff up. Everything started to make sense when Renew got hurt, when he hurt his knee. All of a sudden, the offense kind of clicked, and Ballo had the room to operate a little bit, and they went 4 out, and things just kind of got simple. And then when he came back, they couldn't wait to complicate it again.
Do you see a path for Indiana to make it to the NCAA tournament?
They got to win Sunday. If they win Sunday, they got a chance because that schedule kind of opens up. Penn State, Washington, Oregon, and Ohio State are all beatable. It's likely, I think, that they win 2 of those games, but they're talented enough that they could do something if they wanted to get it done. And so, in the absence, I can't watch these games without some measure of hope. And so that's kind of where I hang my hat is, run the table, win these 5 games. Let's go to the NCAA tournament and see if you can win a couple of games there. And that keeps me motivated to tune in Sunday at 1:30 and see what the Hoosiers can do.
Well, it keeps you motivated, but what's the motivation for this ball club?
Sadly, I think they're motivated by cash, and they've already got it. And that's not a good place to be. I mean, I'm not going to speak for you, and I'm not going to speak for me, but I know that there are people out there who, if you paid them up front the first of the year, every dollar that they were going to make for the year, and they were going to get to keep all of it, whether they showed up to work, worked hard, worked, half days, whatever, there are a lot of people who would choose not to work very hard. And that's kind of the situation I think Indiana finds itself in, where these guys have got their cash, there's no taking it back, and here you go. You've got guys who came for the cash, they've got the cash, and now why are they going to go, why are they going to go above and beyond to try to win basketball games when there's no more money in it?
Well, they've got a head coach who's pretty much done that as well. He's only doing a little bit of the job. I mean, he's given up pregame, postgame interviews. He's no longer appearing on the Indiana basketball coaches show. And so if you want to have a guy to follow, you can just follow your head coach in that regard.
And what kind of an example is that? These guys really, they're supposed to be educators. And I think the first thing you do when you're an educator is set an example for your students and become kind of a mentor for them. And this guy has been nothing, has been a zero as a teacher, either as a basketball coach or as a human being. And that's what I think finally doomed him. And anybody who believes that he walked into Scott Dolson's office and said, "Hey, Scott, man, I think that what we need to do is I need to separate from the team after this season for the good of the program." Anybody who thinks that was a conversation that was had is deranged. They're clinically insane.
I think we've been very apparent to that, especially the response that Mike Woodson's had. And I guess in hindsight, did Scott Dolson do the right thing to try to allow him to perhaps save face? Because that seems like the only reason you do it this way.
You know, I think that it kind of keeps the peace within the basketball family. And so there's no point in agitating people. The goal of the deal is to get Woodson out. And so if you can get Woodson out without ruffling a bunch of feathers with the Board of Trustees and with a bunch of former players, you know what, go ahead and do that. I think that's the pragmatic approach. My approach would be a little angrier and more emotional, and I'm not sure whether that would be right or wrong, but I think it would be a lot more fun to watch.
Of course, did you have a chance to see Purdue last night?
I did.
To me, it looks like a tired team that's just been beaten down, and right now they just need a break mentally and physically.
It is, and hopefully they don't get it this coming Sunday in Bloomington. But they really, I thought Michigan State really put together a good game plan. I thought it was a master class in how to frustrate Braden Smith. Like, everybody was looking at Braden Smith. When he had the ball, that defense was keyed. 5 guys all keyed on Braden Smith, and that made life for that offense really, really difficult. And so you had turnovers, and those turnovers led to buckets. And all of a sudden, you know, that 10-0 run toward the end of the first half and that 8-0 run to begin the second half, that became way too much for that team to overcome. And I thought it was, you know, and I really enjoy watching Purdue play, and I like Matt Painter a lot and really have a lot of respect for his program. But last night was just, to me, a masterclass by Izzo and by Michigan State following that game plan and really playing good, energetic basketball. I really enjoyed watching it.
The way they drew up that ball screen and roll with the lob pass, unbelievable. They knew exactly where Purdue would be defensively and took advantage of it time and time again.
You know, and hopefully Indiana was watching last night, although I suspect there were cigars and wine and a delicious Italian dinner that got in the way of their watching that game. But hopefully they can do a lot of the same thing. Purdue's really not a good 2-point field goal defensive team. They're really one of the worst in college. They're really good at defending the perimeter, but they're not good inside. And if you can pick and roll them to death with Ballo, you know, you got a real chance to win that game down in Bloomington. I thought that first game they played them tough, and we'll see if they can do it again. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to have a good time watching that game on Sunday.
Time to move forward with the Indiana Hoosiers. Now that we know Mike Woodson is stepping aside, we all of our focus is on who's going to be next. I've been on Dusty May from the beginning. His post-game comments didn't seem to discourage me one bit. To me, it was a guy who was leaving the door wide open. Michigan's going to try to close it. They're going to try to put a lot of pressure on Dusty to sign that extension and get that big old buyout in there that keeps him in Michigan. But there's a number of names being mentioned. Who do you like?
I like Dusty. And not just because he's an Indiana guy and he was a manager for IU and started his career in Bloomington and that he's from Greene County, but it doesn't hurt. He's just a really good coach, and more than anything else, I think he's just a really normal guy. And I want Indiana for once to hire a normal guy. Don't try to win the press conference where he's introduced. Don't hire a celebrity coach. Don't hire a guy who's going to come to Indiana and bring his special flavor to the basketball program. Hire somebody who's going to be somebody who tries to bring recruits in to do that kind of thing and make Indiana special. Do it through the players. It's been so long since we have had at Indiana a coach who wasn't completely self-immersed and a total buyer of his own nonsense that I don't even know what it would be like anymore to have a coach as sane as a guy like Matt Painter or Chris Holtman or any of like dozens of guys, but it seems like Dusty May is exactly that kind of guy. So I don't want to hear from like Buzz Williams. I don't want to hear like Mick Cronin. Rick Pitino, despite the fact that he's as good a basketball coach as there is in college basketball. I mean, my goodness, what he's doing with St. John's is unbelievable. Still, I want a guy who's going to come to Bloomington and feel like the campus is special and his players are special. Not that he's special. I don't need a special coach anymore.
Kent Sterling joining us here on the Sports Rush. Always great to have Kent take a few minutes and join us here on the show. And, Kent, I'll let you end on that note. It's an Optimism Wednesday, so we kept most of it fairly positive for you today. But have a great rest of the week, and can't wait to talk to you again.
You too. And by the way, you're a good-looking man yourself, Brett.
Oh, well, I greatly appreciate that, Kent. I'd add a few things to it, but I'm out of time. I'm out of time. Thanks, Kent. That is Kent Sterling joining us here on the Sports Rush. I gave him all those compliments. The best thing is I'm kind of a good-looking guy, too. I appreciate that, Kent.
Hey, you got to take what you can get.
Well, I hope my wife's listening.
Yeah, there you go.
You say somebody, I can tell her. Somebody said I was kind of a half good-looking guy today.
Can vouch for you.
Yeah, it was Kent Sterling out of Indianapolis, but it still counts.
Yeah.
All right, we got to take a break. Plenty more coming up, including breaking down high school girls basketball semi-states. I've been doing some research on the opponents that'll be facing Norwell and Columbia City. We'll tell you about their season so far and what will be some of the keys to the game. That'll be next right here on the Sports Rush, 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Back on the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. Brett Rump with Adam Lundy. Our Parkview Sports Medicine text line, 260-447-8500. That's 260-447-8500. It is available for all you bacon lovers. Oh, man. I'll tell you what. You know what? I could have said, sausage or dog poop, and we'd end up with more people texting in saying, I think I'd go with the dog poop, but just because I picked sausage.
Yeah, you think they're all
out? Look at bacon, that's bacon. They all go, it's happened for years. Always want to side with the producer.
You're a sausage homer, Brett.
Fruit Loops or Fruity Pebbles?
Oh. I don't like either. Am I a sinner if I say
you're not a fruity guy?
They're just too artificial.
What are you, like cornflakes or Wheaties?
Yeah,
or
I'm boring. I mean, I'm down for some cornflakes, Frosted Flakes if I'm going sweet.
Wheat Chex or Rice Chex? Rice Chex.
Definitely rice.
Yeah.
Oh, no, corn. I prefer corn over rice.
Oh, you prefer the corn over the rice?
Corn Chex?
I'd go Rice Chex, Wheat Chex, Corn Chex in that order.
You don't like corn?
No, I'm not. No, I'd put them third.
I love corn flakes.
Now I'd go. I would go Fruity Pebbles over Fruit Loops.
Okay, I don't know. I mean, all right. Well, checking in on our March Madness cereal bracket here,
yeah.
It looks like Fruit Loops.
Yeah, maybe that's what we need to do is put together a breakfast food March Madness bracket.
If I do have to go sweet though, I'm going Reese's Puffs. I like the peanut butter chocolate. Yeah, there we go. Now
it just seems weird to me to take a candy bar and buy it as your cereal.
It tastes weird to me to have some.
It's so much healthier to take Fruity Pebbles. Why am I?
It's fruit.
Yeah, at least I'm getting my fruit vitamins, aren't I? Maybe? No?
Oh, no.
Oh, man. 260-447-8500. And we were talking about the scheduling with IU and Purdue as IU's added Marquette as a non-conference opponent next year on a neutral site. It'll be at Chicago's United Center.
Yeah, home of the Bulls.
Home of the Bulls, home of the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
And that'll be on November 9th. And also Purdue, a home and home. And yes, it is in Mackey Arena next season against Iowa State. I started to think about the Mastodons and like putting together the perfect schedule next year. And even though it's not my job, if anybody's listening, it might be because I got the perfect Mastodon schedule. Get 3 top 150 mid-majors. Now, top 150 in mid-majors is your top half of all college basketball teams, which means you're dealing with teams that probably finished first, second, or maybe even third, no worse than third, in a good mid-major conference. And the reason is because those are the challenges you would face if you want to win a postseason tournament to win a ticket to the NCAA. Those are the types of teams you would have to beat. Are teams that, you look at the Horizon League right now, most of the top teams are around 150, 160. You've got Milwaukee a little above that. And so I thought if you can get 3 top 50 mid-majors to agree to schedule a home and home, that would be perfect. And then and of course I have no control over the budget, so whatever this cost, it probably is over the budget, but I'm still going to go with my schedule. 4 non-conference games against mid-majors where you schedule a home and home for a mid-major that's ranked between 150 and 250. Try to get rid of those teams in the 300s. They're the ones that are most easily available, but get out and fight to try to get those ones in the 150 to 250. You know, it's so tough because what happens is you end up with certain open dates because you've got to try to schedule your pay games, your bye games, your Big Ten conference opponents. You try to schedule those first, then you start to fill in. You get your MTE, and the next thing you know, you got to find somebody who's got the date open that you're looking for. And that's where the Mastodons have ended up with a couple of opponents that have been in the low 300s that they probably would have done better to play somebody much higher, but they couldn't get them scheduled because of date availability. And then you play your 3 money games, you play your MTE, and boom, you've got your non-conference schedule. Of course, you have to play your 2 non-D1 opponents, and everybody wants to question, what are the Mastodons doing playing teams like Bluffton or Olivet or
Defiance,
Manchester? I mean, yeah, you play those teams because in the power conferences, they take on teams that are 300, 350 on the NCAA list, which means they're 300 positions below what most of those power conference teams are. And for a team that's in the 150 to 200 range, if you're going to take on an opponent that's 300 rankings below you, like the power conference teams do regularly, then you're going to end up having to go tap into Division II, Division III, NAIA basketball. And so they allow mid-majors to get a couple of those games each year. It allows you to maybe work on some things, perhaps. It fills out your home schedule because those are 2 automatic home games that are added, and getting home games is very difficult, and you need a certain number of home games, again, for the budget. So I understand why you play teams that you might ultimately beat by 20, 30, 40 points, or if you're Green Bay, you might lose them. But I think the Dons can be pretty confident in most cases when they play a non-D1 that they'll get a victory, but they also get the extra home game, and it makes it simple to fill out the schedule because a lot of those teams are willing to play on any day that you offer them because it's their chance to play an exhibition against a D1 opponent. It would be like if the Mastodons were invited down to Bloomington to play IU.
Right.
And they're not getting that invitation anymore. Wonder why.
Yeah, no, I definitely like the idea of those 4 150 to 250s kind of staying out there away from the 250s and unders. Just a little bit higher level competition in the non-conference schedule would be really good for the Dons, I think.
Coming up this Saturday, it is girls basketball semi-state, which is the biggest day of the year now on the high school basketball calendar because you've got 2 games in the morning and you have to come back and win a championship that night. And for our area schools, we've got a number of them participating. In 3A, you've got Norwell versus Delta and Columbia City versus Highland. They will play at the Huntington North semi-state. And for Delta, it's kind of interesting. It's a team that lost their last 3 games of the regular season, and they were just barely a little over 500 when you get to the postseason, and now they've run off a streak of 4 straight wins to make it to a semi-state. They were 14-7 at the end of the regular season. I guess that's still a 2-to-1 ratio, but they had lost 3 straight games to end the regular season. Now they've beaten Hamilton Heights, Jay County, Yorktown, and Maconaquah by 4 in the regional. And it was their first ever regional championship. They've never won a semi-state. So I feel like Norwell, with their experience, has a huge advantage in this one. If you look at the losses for Norwell, we talked to Eric Thornton about this. They played a lot of really good teams. Teams like Warsaw, Northridge, Homestead, Columbia City, Noblesville, Belmont. Those are the teams they lost to. And they've been kind of rolling through the tournament so far. Beat Marion 81-28. Beat Mississinawa 64-16. They beat Belmont by 18 points, and that's a really good Belmont team. And then they beat East Noble at the regional 72-48. That was their 5th regional championship. And they've won 2 semi-state championships. Do you know when the last one was?
Ooh, was it? I feel like it would be last season, but
it was last season.
I mean, it's the Norwell, the girls.
Yeah, they made it to state last year.
Yeah,
and so two semi-state championships in Norwell's history, and one of them came last year.
I remember that.
But they lost the state championship game 63-60 to Gibson Southern.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah.
And then Columbia City is going to take on Highland. The Trojans just 15-10. They've not played a great schedule. In fact, 3 of their 15 wins were against teams that finished the year with a winning record. That means 12 of the 15 were against teams that finished with a losing record. So they kind of beat up on some not-so-good teams. They got by Culver Academy 56-53 to win the regional. But didn't have to play anybody really in their sectional. It was a weak sectional.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a 23-4 Columbia City Eagles team where 3 of their 4 losses came to a 4A team, Columbia City being a 3A team. But like you said, they also have a lot of wins over some quality 4A programs here in the area, including in the SAC. So I think that they have the better schedule strength and, should be looking good against Highland.
And they got the monkey off their back, so now they're on kind of a free roll because they got their first sectional championship since 2000. They'd been snake bit all those years running into Homestead in the sectional. So they finally get a sectional championship under Coach Amy Shearer. They finally get a regional championship. The last year for both of those was 2000. In fact, back in 2000, they had quite the run in that season because they ended up winning a semi-state that year as well. 9 regional titles now for Columbia City, and so many of them under Coach Wayne Krieger, who's an assistant with Maria Marcasano at Purdue Fort Wayne now. But Columbia City takes on a Highland team. They really should beat Highland. One player that really stands out, and she might be the state's top scorer. I'm not sure if she's leading the state, but Jordan Steele is averaging 26.2 points per game. She attempts 8.5 threes per contest, hits 30% of them, and takes 8 free throws a game, where she's hitting 76%. Scores 26.2 per game, a 5'9 junior for Highland. Other than that, not a ton of scoring. I mean, everybody averages like 5 points or less. So, pretty much the offense is Jordan Steele.
You know who you're going to want to guard. I can tell you that there are only 3 players in girls basketball in Indiana who averaged more points per game than her this season. So definitely a high-volume scorer to look out for.
Yeah, she's kind of the one-man band when it comes to Highland offensively. They're 15-10, taking on the 23-4 Columbia City Eagles. We'll take a timeout, come back, wrap it up next. It's the Sports Rush Wednesday edition on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. The trouble with broadcasting NASCAR is you start and stop, you start and stop, you start and stop. I don't even know when or what station that game ended or that race ended up on Sunday. It started and stopped. I mean, it was like at one point they were getting ready to start. President Trump flew in with Air Force One, and then they ended like 12 hours later. It was ridiculous. But, hey, if you want to get caught up in what happened at Daytona, we've got NASCAR Live coming your way at 6 o'clock. That'll be next right here on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Coming up tomorrow, Pacers back to action after their all-star break against the Memphis Grizzlies. And on Friday night, we got Mastodons basketball against Oakland at the Gates Center. 7 o'clock tip, 6:45 pregame. And we'll have the Parkview Sports Medicine High School basketball postgame show right after Mastodons basketball on Friday night. Thanks to our guests that appeared on the show today. Mike Avery, head coach of the Fort Wayne FC. Also, thanks to Kent Sterling, as always. Very complimentary on an Optimism Wednesday. We always appreciate Kent Sterling jumping on and joining us on the show. We're coming back tomorrow from 4 to 6 with your daily local sports fix. This has been the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM.